Hey, thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi here to take a look at what's going to be an active next 24 hours or so in terms of Colorado weather. We've got really strong winds. That's our main takeaway, and also some pretty decent snow on up into the mountains here along the Front Range that will stay mostly dry, maybe a slight chance for a snow shower tomorrow afternoon as a cold front moves on through. Right now, though, pretty calm out there. You head atop some of those mountains in the background. That's where things are a little dicier and certainly a lot windier on this Thursday morning, looking pretty outside. It will melt off a fair bit of that snowfall. Interesting temperature forecast. I'll explain that here in just a second. Headlines for today: strong winds for tonight and tomorrow. Mountain snowfall starting in some cases as soon as this afternoon, and then a much calmer weekend ahead. But those winds, well, they're starting on up for us. Those winds will be in place. But most of these high wind alerts go into place this afternoon and will go until tomorrow. High wind watch for the eastern plains, gusts up to 60 miles an hour, and then up to 75, maybe even 80 miles an hour for us in the foothills in southern Colorado. Right now, those winds are, for most of us, calmer, but you head atop, get to 11, 12,000 feet, Berthoud Pass, that's where those winds are really cranking on up at this hour, and those winds will only intensify in the high terrain later on today. If you're planning on traveling through the mountains, especially if you have a high-profile vehicle, you got a truck, an 18-wheeler, or maybe something with a tall flat top, those Sprinter vans, something like that, I would go now when the winds are still, generally speaking, a bit calmer, because this afternoon those winds really crank on up, and you will notice it up into the high terrain. By the way, if you're skiing, especially in some of those more wind-prone locations like Breckenridge or Arapahoe Basin, today, tomorrow, it's going to be a little dicey in terms of that skiing. Just keep in mind that we will be dealing with strong winds in both in the high country in particular. So for today, again, those winds ramp on up into the mountains and foothills. We'll start to see those winds rev on up in the foothills and eastern plains tonight, but I think the strongest winds for us in eastern Colorado. So the urban corridor on east, the foothills, Palmer Divide on east, it's going to be more tomorrow morning, early tomorrow and tomorrow morning, when we'll see those strongest winds here along the Front Range and as well as into southern Colorado as well. Tomorrow morning, those winds will be as strong as 60+ miles an hour in southern Colorado. In the foothills, we'll see some localized wind gusts on up into maybe even as strong as, I wouldn't be surprised we see a few 75-mile-an-hour wind gusts in some of the foothills. So closer look in here at the wind gust forecast for a day tomorrow. Again, notice by tonight, places like Allens Park, Red Feather Lakes, Netherland, Longmont, Boulder. This may be a little overdone what you're seeing there in Longmont. I wouldn't anticipate 76-mile-an-hour wind gusts there. That seems a little strong to me based off of this model, but it's worth noting that we are going to see a push of really strong winds late tonight and early tomorrow morning. And in the Denver area, we're probably talking about wind gusts 40, 45 miles an hour, so nothing to scoff at here in the Denver area, but the strongest winds will be in the foothills, especially, and also down into the Palmer Divide for our friends in Castle Rock and Dougco, as well as into Albert County. I would certainly bring inside, I'm pushing this back a little bit so we can show you what you can expect there along the Palmer Divide. Look at that, those gusts getting close to 70 miles an hour in Castle Rock. And we're not quite that used to getting these types of wind events along the Palmer Divide. So bring inside the patio furniture, the holiday lights, anything like that that might be strewn around. Unless you want it in your neighbor's yard, probably a good idea to bring it inside here tonight. Now, the other story, it's the snow, and this is going to be for your Friday, where we're late tonight for your Friday. Winter weather advisories for the San Juans, as well as into the flat tops, and then winter storm warnings for much of mountains, 5 to 10 inches, widespread snowfall for us. But I think the wind accompanying this snow is going to make travel exceptionally difficult. So those snowfall amounts, I suppose, fairly typical for the mountains this time of year. But again, just keep in mind that this is going to be 5 to 10 inches of snow. That's going to be wind driven. So travel is going to be exceptionally difficult with this upcoming storm system compared to what you might typically expect. Right now, HCA Doppler radar is quiet, but that does change later on this afternoon and tonight. First snow showers developing probably, I do think that this afternoon and tonight we'll start to see a few snow showers in the far northern mountains. Shouldn't be a big deal in terms of travel other than the wind. The snow will certainly disrupt travel overnight tonight and to early tomorrow morning, and that's when we could see some pretty heavy snow at times for us. The good news, at least in terms of travel, is that snow will be fairly short-lived. By the time we get to tomorrow evening, the snow will be mostly done with. into the high terrain by tomorrow night. We'll be talking about clear conditions. Snowfall amounts, I mentioned some of those already for you. Fairly widespread, 5 to 10 inches worth of snowfall into the high terrain, and the southern mountains maybe more like 4 to 5, maybe 6, 7 inches in a few spots. But for the most part, those snowfall amounts going to be strong, highest for us from I-70 on north. Temperatures right now, a few spots already close to 60 degrees. What is fascinating to me, look at that in Denver and Greeley, and that is a huge gap in terms of those temperatures in a very short space and distance for us. And I kind of want to close on in here on the immediate metro area, because what's happening right now is a fascinating, at least from a weather perspective, fascinating dynamic where we've got a colder pool of air just to our north, and then along and south of I-70, very, very different air masses. And so that's why Fort Lupton and DIA separated by about 10 miles, and they're separated by about 18 degrees right now. So we could see some pretty big fluctuations in those temperatures as the day wears on. Right now, probably going to be our warmest period of the day, but again, that huge cold pool just off to our north tells us that we could be dealing with much colder temperatures as that pushes slightly off to our south later on through the afternoon. Again, to me that's fascinating, but definitely going to be interesting nonetheless. 54 for us today, partly cloudy skies. Again, those high temperatures right about now. Notice Greeley much colder today, and that is thanks to that colder air just off to our north. Wouldn't be surprised if Greeley doesn't get out of the 30s today, to be honest about it, but we may get a little surge of warmer air into Greeley, and that may briefly warm us on up. It's a tricky temperature forecast, no doubt about it. And then in southeast Colorado, a few spots getting close to 70 degrees. Red flag warning coming up for southeast Colorado. This is the area that did not see snow yesterday. So normally, because of those strong winds that we're talking about tomorrow, it would be a high fire danger day, but because we got that snowpack still on the ground, the grass is still wet, that will limit the fire danger for much of northern Colorado, southeast Colorado. This is where the snow did not fall, therefore the fire danger is going to be higher in this part of the state. Tonight, we do drop down to 10 degrees. That's going to be early tomorrow morning when we do get those temperatures on down. But for most of tonight, it is seasonably chilly with those temperatures in the 20s and 30s. That cold front arrives after dark that will drop our temperatures by tomorrow morning down into the teens. Tomorrow, 51 for us in Denver, but the winds will make it feel a lot colder than that. It is a Bora wind, which means that it's going to be very, very cold up into the higher elevations, and that colder air is going to be brought down to the surface. So long story short, normally our strong wind days here in the Denver area are warmer wind kind of events. Tomorrow's is going to be a cold wind kind of event. A little unusual for us, but maybe a little bit on the interesting side is that it may feel a lot colder than usual tomorrow, despite the fact that the air temperature will get on up into the low 50s. 40s, 50s for the next 7 days. We do have a chance for some rain and snow on Monday. At this point, it doesn't look like a big deal, but then end of next week perhaps does turn a bit more interesting. And then, by the way, now is the start of the summer, of course, and that means the start of meteorological winter. And, well, snowpack-wise, we're doing okay, especially in the central and northern mountains, but a bit of a typical La Nina pattern where southern Colorado right now lagging a little bit in terms of that snowpack compared to northern Colorado, which is typical of a La Nina winter. Usually it's the northern mountains that will do better than the southern mountains, and we're starting to see that play out a little bit here with that dynamic with the northern and central mountains seeing a fair bit more snowfall compared to southern Colorado. So big things to take away: strong winds tonight and tomorrow, especially in the foothills and the mountains. And then also, of course, we're talking about that potential for some pretty decent amount of snowfall as well. Temperatures going to be all over the place here along the Front Range for today. Some spots may not get out of the 30s or even 20s, while some spots here along the Palmer Divide may get as warm as the mid-60s. So huge gap in those temperatures later on today. Meteorologist Greg Perez will have an update for you at 9 News at noon. And then also Chief Meteorologist Kathy Sabin's in at 4 and 5. And then Meteorologist Lauren Robinson in at 6, 9, and 10 tonight on the 9 News family of networks. Again, bring inside those holiday lights, those all that patio furniture, anything that might be strewn about out on the lawn right now. Bring that inside because those winds will be strong enough basically everywhere to blow things around a little bit. Once again, I'm Meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus.